Very good evening to everybody and welcome to this in-concert session, our next live stream on Saturday the 28th of November. I'm playing a little improvisation, a calm improvisation. I think trying to calm my nerves before the storm which is about to erupt. With a storm of music, including music by Beethoven, the Moonlight Sonata, which is going to erupt later in this program. I've got a very busy program and I hope you are going to enjoy the selection of music tonight by Beethoven, by Schubert, by Liszt, Scriabin, Debussy and Jean-Philippe Rameau, French 17th century harpsichord composer. This evening's program is number 70 in our selection of streams, live streams coming to you on a number of platforms, and I'm sure many of you are watching it on YouTube. And please do comment on YouTube. I can't obviously comment or respond to the comments in real time, but I always do look and read, and I'm always very interested to see what everyone has to say. And of course, also if you're on any of our channels, any of our pages or profiles on Facebook, please do comment. It's always wonderful to hear the response and hear your experience of the evening and the program and the presentation and the selection of music and what it's like for you to be able to access these selections, classical programs, especially on Saturday night, the classical program we have tonight. Very interested to hear what you all make of it. If you are able to support us, of course, please do visit our website at musicrevival.co.za. There will also be a QR code coming up at the end of the program where you'll be able to point your camera app on your smartphone at the QR code when it appears, and it will automatically lead you to a website where you can make a donation via the Quicket platform. So this evening's program, as I say, in concert, a selection of classical music. I've chosen some of my favorite pieces again, and with this being now the final weeks before the period, I'm not talking about Christmas, thank goodness, you'll be pleased to know. I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but the 250th celebration anniversary of Ludwig van Beethoven's birth on the 16th or 17th of December, which depending on which day you prefer. And so each of our concerts going up to this point and beyond is going to feature a work by Beethoven. So I did play a little prelude, the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata on Wednesday in our piano hour, and this evening, the Saturday night concert, I'm going to play the entire work. So it's a very stormy, very dramatic and very intense piece of music. You can see here there's some new arrangements. We've got a visitor already. We've got two visitors already who've coming nestling themselves on the cushions here. We had Frida was with us, but Frida is not a fan of my piano playing, and as soon as I started to warm up and practice and rehearse a little bit, she disappeared. So I'm sure at some point Barry, who's running the controls tonight, is going to focus on Wendy, and we also have Granny Lulu who's joined us this evening. Today, it's Saturday. It's been a rather blustery day. For those of you who live in this part of the world, you would know that we almost got swept away. There was an incredible wind this morning, howling wind, and all the trees were blowing and nests flying out of trees. And it seems to have calmed down, although it's still pretty muggy and it's pretty warm. There you can see Wendy and Granny Lulu all snuggled up. Lulu seems to be settled in for the night. Hope they are going to enjoy the music. It gets pretty loud under the piano. Anyway, it is 6 o'clock on the dot, so we are going to start off with our program. As I say, this is Christopher Duigan in concert coming to you from our home in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Hope you can join us for the next hour of a selection of very brilliant and hope very beautiful and also uplifting piano music for you. I'm going to start off with a piece which I have included once before by Jean-Philippe Rameau, 17th century harpsichord composer, the Gavotte Six Double. And this is really another name for a theme and subsequent variations, you might say. What's so interesting about this is that it really reveals the composer as a virtuoso keyboard player. We often think harpsichord playing is for nice, polite ladies who do elegant things, and it's all very contained and very subdued. But in fact, you'll see from this music, the composer Rameau was very brilliant and really expected the performer to pull out all the stops. There's a virtuosity in itself. But what's also very nice, and I find very comforting about the piece, and it's a great piece to start with, is that this very simple gavotte, the dance which starts the music, really provides a wonderful secure foundation for the entire piece. And this shape and this melody is repeated again and again and again. And so in this predictability, in the settled nature of us hearing a pattern that we are presented with and hearing that same pattern again, even though there might be few notes, or notes in the left hand, notes in the right hand, notes in a sort of third point figure, in the middle hand it almost seems sometimes, hearing the same pattern in the same sequence is very comforting and very uplifting. Even the Hardy-Dars there agree. So this is Jean-Philippe Rameau's Gavotte and Six Double, or Six Double. The Gavotte in Cis Double by Jean-Philippe Rameau, 18th century harpsichord composer. The beautiful Gavotte, a very simple, elegant dance, and then the subsequent repeat of that phrase and that melody through various patterns, and a very regal and lovely start, a very unique sound there, I think, to start the program. Now, the major work on tonight's performance, on tonight's in-concert session, is the Moonlight Sonata, and I'm going to be playing the entire work, all three movements for you tonight. As I said, I'm going to be including a major work in every concert, certainly in the in-concert sessions, which are on Saturday, and then a precursor, something on the lighter sessions on Wednesdays as well, of what's coming up. And we even have some extra surprise concerts. We have an extra stream or two coming up for you as well to celebrate this Beethoven session, the Beethoven period that leads, as I say, up to the 16th and 17th of December. So the Moonlight Sonata, I've talked about this before. The title, The Moonlight, not Beethoven's own title, but a title given by the German music critic Ludwig Rellstab shortly, about 50 years or so after Beethoven published this piece, or after Beethoven's death at least. And he said that it reminded him, the opening movement, this very gentle, calm, famous moonlight notion that everyone recognizes and knows, reminded him of the moonlight on the Lake Lucerne on a very dark and mysterious night. We find, as I've said before as well, and I've talked about this piece, in terms of Beethoven's output, we find this at the beginning of what we might be able to divide Beethoven's piano sonatas and compositions into three periods, and this is the middle period where Beethoven's really seeking ways of finding more succinct and more powerful ways of expressing his ideas. In the first part of his output, in the first part of the sonatas up to this point, he had gained insight and copied the models of Haydn, who had taught him, and Mozart and his other contemporaries. But here he was really starting to look for something new, and so the two sonatas that he published as Opus 27, Opus 27 number 1 and number 2, he published as Sonata quasi una fantasia. In other words, a sonata as a fantasy. And this fantasy gives us a sense that there's a freedom of experience, a freedom of idea, a freedom of emotion that's going to break the tight structure rules of the sonata at that time. Before this, Beethoven might have composed a sonata in 3 or 4 movements. The first movement would have been a very strong, brilliant, outgoing movement full of vigorous ideas. The second movement, a slow movement, an adagio, searching sometimes, very gentle at other times. A third movement, which he sometimes left out, which was very brief, a little minuet and true, a little moment in between. And then the fourth movement would have been a rondo, a piece of music that was quite light and entertaining, just to end off on a light and easygoing note. But I think Beethoven was really looking at this point and saying that his music is not about entertainment, it's not about being light, charming, acceptable and pleasing. He's got a lot more to say. He's got something very powerful to say in this music. So in this Moonlight Sonata, he rearranges this arrangement, this balance of how the movement works and the music fits together in various movements. Instead of starting with a brilliant outgoing first movement, he starts with a slow movement. So it's almost as though he leaves the first movement away out completely. He starts with a slow movement, this very deep and mysterious mood. The third movement, or the second movement at least then, is this very gentle, lyrical, almost pastoral. It's a very innocent piece of music. It couldn't be gentler or purer in its own fine way. And the last movement is where Beethoven really unleashes the storm. He takes all the power, all the dramatic working out, all the intensity and volume, and he puts it into the last movement. So instead of the last movement being pleasing and gentle to end off on a nice sorbet kind of note, he really puts the meat of the whole sonata, the substance, the working out, the real drama he keeps to the end. And this brings us to the idea that he's always looking to work his music towards a final culmination. There's nothing that just adds on at the end. It's always working towards the final end of what he has got to say. He wants everything to be balanced, and he wants everything to have substance and meaning. And so what we have is these two movements, the first movement, which is the slow movement, and the third movement, which is very dramatic, music of incredible depth, substance and drama, really unbelievable power. In fact, I've played about more than 3/4 of these Beethoven sonatas, it's 32 sonatas, and I think this last movement of the Moonlight is one of Beethoven's, if not the most violent, driven, dark, stormiest. There's a real sense of unforgiving terror, I think, this might be the right word, unrelenting rhythmic drive and surprise and tension which comes through this music. It really is something quite extraordinary. And in the middle of it is this very delicate little moment which sits as a moment of repose, a moment of respite almost, a moment of just being settled between these two extreme worlds. I mean, I'm often puzzled and I wonder what it would have been like for the contemporary audiences to hear this music for the very first time. We've become quite used to it, and certainly we hear very dramatic music in the 19th century. But what would have contemporary audiences in Vienna have thought when they heard Beethoven? They were expecting a nice, charming, pleasing piece of music, and instead they get this, something quite extraordinary, something bold, unrelenting, powerful, dramatic, challenging. It is challenging music. So this is the Sonata Opus 27, number 2, for our Beethoven series on the 250th anniversary of his birth in 1770, his birthday being on the 16th or 17th of December, depending on which day you take. Apparently he was born somewhere between the 15th and the 16th and only christened on the 17th. And there are 3 movements, the first movement being the Adagio sostenuto, the second movement, the gentle minuet, and the third movement, presto agitato, fast and agitated, a very definite command to the performer and warning to the audience that something extraordinary is about to happen. That was the Moonlight Sonata, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, Sonata in C sharp minor, opus 27, number 2. It's quite a piece of music there, and I've certainly was just thinking as I finished, gosh, I've really got my work cut out for me. I'm going to be playing a sonata every week for the next couple of weeks, sometimes 2 weeks. So I'm going to be working rather hard. But as I said, Beethoven really there presenting something very dynamic, very strong. I think Beethoven is some of his most aggressive, violent, might even by the word, taking no prisoners. He's really going all out. He's really kind of trying to get in each movement to the essence, the real core of the music and the sound and the substance of the emotion that he's expressing. And I think that is why Beethoven's music is so important. This is something I've been thinking a lot about with this program and the series of Beethoven's music, because why is Beethoven's music so important to us? And it really comes down to the fact that he manages to express and crystallize and distill every time something so primary about our human emotions, about something that we all share, and yet he expresses them in such a universal way. It's about a universal expression of something that is incredibly human, more than personal, human. And I think that really is why Beethoven is so, what he really managed to do. It's such an incredible career and such an incredible life. So I keep saying, where would our world be without Beethoven's music? I'm going to move on to a piece of music ever so gently, just a slight change, just a fractional second away from that, just a moment to change a style and change a sound, and in fact something not that much after Beethoven. Schubert wrote this Hungarian melody also in Vienna, almost probably no more than 10 or 20 years after the music that you heard, but a very different personality. And Schubert would have been inspired here. He's inspired by his holiday trips away to the Esterházy Palace, which is now in Hungary. Different sound, and here he would have heard traditional music, and he wrote this Hungarian melody. And I'm very fond of this piece because of its repetitive nature. There's a very simple idea which is repeated. It's quite hypnotic, but yet at the same time it's also quite exotic. There's an exotic sound and an exotic feel. The Hungarian Melody there by Franz Schubert, piece of music that I like. Schubert wrote that gem just on its own, not part of any greater set of works or sonata or impromptus, just a simple Hungarian melody, and I think a very charming, exotic and beautiful piece. I'm going to move on to a selection of two extraordinary pieces of music for different reasons. The first of which is Liszt's Concert Etude Un Sospiro, and the second which is Scriabin's Nocturne. Now, Liszt wrote concert etudes as opposed to many other composers. Chopin wrote magnificent etudes that are fantastic music, but Liszt went one step further. He said, I'm going to write music that is not only designed to develop a pianist's technique or explore one particular aspect of technique, whether it be thirds or runs or octaves or scales, whatever it might be, or even a particular type of sound. He said, I'm also going to write them in such a programmatic way, and I'm going to write them so that they can and should be performed for concert use, and those as great public pieces and not just for private study. So he wrote series of twos and threes of these concert etudes, and from a series of three grand concert etudes, the third one, this beautiful piece, Un Sospiro, a sigh. And throughout the music, you will hear this most magnificent undulating, almost like a hum from the piano, and this beautiful melody which erupts, this very beautiful melody floats on top of the hum. And every now and again, the music comes to a halt, and you hear this beautiful sighing, this falling figure. You hear the music sighs in a very sensitive and a very intensely personal way. And this is, I think, typical of Liszt's music, this very grand gesture, but also a magnificently scored and evocative piece of music. A lot of ideas are brought forward, a lot of atmosphere is brought forward in the music. And I've been working again on this piece. I've played several of the etudes, but this is one that I find particularly beautiful. It's very effective, but it's also very challenging, because as you'll see, the melody and everything in the music is always about crossing the hands. So unlike the Beethoven, where everything worked in chords and it all sort of sits in chords under the hands, this piece of music, it sits everywhere except under your hands. You're constantly picking your hands up and crossing them over and putting them down in different places. And it's actually, I'm finding it, I've been battling with it, I have to be honest. I've played it for a few times, and every time I think I'm going to tackle it and conquer this and get on top of it, but every time I seem to fail a little bit more, maybe. So anyway, let's give it a try. I'm going to see what I can do with this session, and hopefully this is going to come out better. This is Concert Etude Un Sospiro, and after that, Scriabin's Nocturne, Opus 9, an extraordinary piece because it's so magnificent, but also it's played with the left hand only. Scriabin was a very enthusiastic pianist, early 20th or late 19th century Russian pianist, and practiced incessantly, so much that he damaged his right hand at some point, and so went on to write, as of other composers, a few pieces for the left hand alone. And not only is this it's not quite a party trick, I mean, it's such an unusual thing, but it's also a really magnificent piece of music that uses the entire piano from almost the bottom to top note. What an incredible piece of music. I mean, apart from the fact that it only uses one hand, it's really an extraordinary piece. I always find such new things every time I play it. There's so many colors and possibilities and phrases, and it's really a wonderful composition. The Nocturne, Opus 9, a piece of night music, very gentle music, very atmospheric moments. And yes, it looks like it did its trick. We have everyone, even Frida's joined us. Wendy's just nibbling away as always. Granny Lulu's far away in another land, really having a jolly good time. Thanks, Barry, for picking that pick up. Lovely. They enjoy the music. Frida normally runs out when I play something brilliant, and Beethoven she doesn't like. So maybe she liked the Scriabin in the list and decided to come back. So I am now going to finish off this evening's program with a composition by the French early 20th century composer Claude Debussy, one of my favorite composers. I mean, Debussy's music was always so exciting, so fascinating to play because of its incredible use of the piano. Just the piano is a vehicle to create textures and atmosphere and color and imagination. And the other thing I find very intriguing about Debussy is that he lives in a very 20th century age. His life and the things that surrounded him and the things that interested him are not that distant to us. And this being an example. For instance, Debussy was very inspired in many occasions by sights and sounds and tried to evoke, again this word of evoke, a sense of place of Spain or of the East or of some kind of American ragtime or jazz in his music. And these are all things we can relate to. These are all things that we know about and we can see and know what is going to happen. And we didn't expect that camera angle to happen. And so the music itself is just fascinating that it relates to things that are not foreign to us, as I say. And in particular in this piece, Poisson d'Or or Goldfish, Debussy was inspired by a Chinese lacquer print or lacquer that he had in his own possession. And of course you can see pictures of this if you look on the internet or any book on Debussy. It's a visual element that we can be inspired by. And when I say lacquer, it's Lacquer, not Lekker. That's something else. Lacquer is something else, but this is a lacquer, Chinese lacquer of two goldfish and mother of pearl entwined in ebony background. And so this piece of music, part of his homage, he wrote two sets of homage magnificently. This is the third piece from the second set, and it captures all the atmosphere of water, of the shimmering scales, the goldfish shimmering, catching light, intertwined playing. There's a sense of play, there's a sense of exuberance and abundance and increase in energy, which some people say could be alluding to the fact that the fish is caught, or one of the fish is caught by a fisherman. But it also might lead to other sort of interpretations, who knows. So a wonderful composition, Poisson d'Or by Claude Debussy. dash of golden light there. Poisson d'Or, Golden Fish by Claude Debussy, bringing to an end this evening's In Concert. Hope you've enjoyed the varied selection from the evocations of Liszt, In Sospiro, and the Left Hand Nocturne, the most gentle night atmospheres, and Debussy, a very beautiful natural nature scene of water, preceded by the rather intense drama of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. What a wonderful piece. And starting off with the Gavotte et Six Doublés by Jean-Philippe Rameau, bringing us to an end to Saturday Nights in Concert. If you are able to support us, please do support us by visiting our website. We have a donate page, and you'll be able to find all the links to our banking details as well as PayPal. If you're international visitors, you can also play via Quicket, and there will be a QR code appearing on the screen shortly, I'm sure. And also the Yoco platform, which is a direct credit card. I am certainly totally dependent on the donations and the income from these streams. I'm unable to produce any concerts at the moment, certainly on my own risk, with the incredibly strict restrictions on the sizes of audience, and I'm really still not sure how many people are wanting to really gather in large numbers for concerts. So this online program is really the only way I'm able to earn a living, but we've made a great effort. We have a fantastic studio set up thanks to the support that we've had from a number of very generous individuals. Barry's doing a great job on the visuals, and we're having a wonderful, even the dogs are coming in to enjoy the music. I mean, they're getting a whole treat of 2 hours of concert performance every week. Well, isn't that great fun? Look, Wendy Pop is giving Lulu a nice lick. Isn't that sweet? On Wednesday, I'll be playing another piano hour, as well as a preview of our next Saturday stream with some Beethoven, but also an improvisation on A Christmas Carol and music by Nesta Nazareth and Scott Joplin, and maybe one of our own pieces too, as well as some music by Schubert and Chopin. So please do join us on Wednesday at 6, and again next Saturday we finally, all things coming together, are going to have the performance of the Dumke Trio with the Trio Sophia next Saturday at 6 p.m. and that's going to be really lovely music and some really beautiful playing, I can guarantee you. So thank you for joining us tonight. Stay well, look after yourselves. A reminder that you can view any of our previous streams and the stream on YouTube. If you've missed it this evening, you'll have to wait until tomorrow morning to see it on YouTube, unless you are a subscriber, in which case you would have got a notification by email and you can click on that. But from tomorrow morning, you can see this on YouTube, or you can review it now at our website. Please feel free to forward this on to any of your friends and guests that you might have. The program is going out, and it's really wonderful to have as many people watching and reach as many people to share this wonderful experience of music with you via this medium of live stream. What fun it's been. Look after yourself, stay well, and see you next time.